Hello, everybody. My name is Jennifer Hamey. I'm an attorney in Ellenton, Florida. I live in the Parrish community. So, like many of you, I'm stuck at home right now, uh, kind of twiddling my thumbs, I feel like some days. I have started painting my house, actually, the inside of my house, which, funny enough, the camera that I'm using to do this is sitting on top of one of the gallons of paint, so that's up high enough for me to be able to see you and see the camera. So, I posted a few days ago out on the Facebook and onto Parents Parish Network, out to Nextdoor in the area, just kind of a posting saying, hey, does anybody have any legal issues they'd like to hear about? That I can give some general information on, some topics I can help with since I am stuck at home. I got into the legal profession because I love to work with people, help people with their problems. And I really, really miss the biggest thing I'm missing right now is just the ability to meet with my clients, hear their stories, how long they've been married, hear about their kids and their hobbies and why they moved to Florida and where they came from, and to share some of my stories back. So that's what I'm missing most about right now is not being able to have that kind of interaction. So I guess I didn't realize how social I was until all of this came about, and I wasn't able to really be able to talk to people on a day-to-day basis. So, that being said, I did have several responses. I appreciate the people that responded. And I'm just now seeing that I have a whole bunch of lighting issue here. So I'm going to close my blind. Give me just a second. See if that's a little better. Yep, that's great. Okay, so like I was saying, the comments that I got back, and I appreciate those that commented, really gave me some good questions, some feedback of things that people would like to hear about. So today's topic, and I apologize, I'm going to be shooting at some notes so I can see what I'm doing here, um, came actually from a friend of mine in Ohio. I'm licensed in Ohio and in Florida. I started practicing in Ohio back in '06. I've been in the legal field since 1999 as a paralegal first. So I started practicing in '06 in Ohio, and then I moved down to Florida, started practicing down here in 2016. So my friend from Ohio had sent me out a message, and I decided to use his for the very first topic. And just a quick shout out to him. Even though he's from Ohio, he's a huge Florida Gators fan. I'm a huge, as you can see, Tennessee Vols fan. So in honor of just messing with him and our little rivalry we've got going on, I had to wear my Tennessee shirt today to represent. So that's why you see that on today. But so his question today is basically, how do I protect the assets of somebody who's facing going into a nursing home? And I think that's an issue that a lot of people run into, whether it's a parent, a spouse, um, just a close family member that's going into a nursing home. They have assets. They go, oh my gosh, we want to protect these assets. We don't know how to protect these assets. Is it too late to protect the assets? And how is this person going to qualify for Medicaid, or are they going to qualify for Medicaid? So I have to put a disclaimer out here, first of all, the lawyer part of me, that basically says I am in no way a Medicaid expert. Okay, I have had experience with Medicaid over the years, just because I've been in the legal field for the last 20 years. I've seen a lot of circumstances. I did do some research and got some information of some things that I think are important to Medicaid, kind of the broad strokes of what those answers would be. But I do highly suggest that if you do have a situation where you think somebody's going to be going into a nursing home, it's a concern you have moving forward, that you definitely seek counsel from an attorney who does elder law, who does Medicaid specifically. It's a very specific area that you want to make sure you have somebody that you are very aware of that knows what they're doing. I know there's several in Bradenton, Sarasota area, for those that are here local in Florida, for my Ohio friends, Cleveland, Akron area. They're also going to have attorneys that are going to be able to assist with you. So really shop around and find somebody that knows what they're doing for Medicaid. So that being said, the first thing I'm going to start with is, what is Medicaid? Medicaid is a federal program. It is done by each of the states, so the states do have some discretion, but overall it is a federal program, and it's a poverty program. It basically is somebody saying, hey, I don't have any money, I don't have any assets to be able to take care of paying for my nursing home needs that are frequently $6, $7, $8,000 a month. I need the government to step in and help me to pay for these monthly expenses that I need for my nursing care. And the government will do that. The government will help you with that. But of course, there are exceptions and there's rules and there's requirements. Medicaid is saying if you want Medicaid benefits from us, you have to have no assets. So what does that mean? Basically, they're saying, are you poor enough for us to help you with this program? So one of the things they're going to look at is when you're applying for Medicaid is going to be what's called a look back period. The look back period is 5 years. Basically, Medicaid says, hey, if you're applying for Medicaid, anything you've done in the last 5 years, we want to know about. Any transfers, any money you've spent, purchases you've made, we need you to go back 5 years and you need to tell us what you spent your money on so that we can determine if you spent those on things that were acceptable for a spend down or for getting rid of those assets before we'll determine if we're going to allow you to be part of this program. Now, most people don't know that they're going into a nursing home. They don't say, okay, at 76 years old, I know that I'm going to go into a nursing home. So I'm now 70, so I better look over that next 5 years to start getting rid of my assets so that I can go into a nursing home. Most of us don't know that. Short of some major event happening, early diagnosis of Alzheimer's, some type of progressive disease that you know is eventually going to lead you into a nursing home, more likely than not. Most of us just don't know if that's going to happen. So it's hard for us to plan that. The second part of that is one of the things Medicaid is looking at is that you have really gotten rid of all of your assets prior to that 5-year look back period of time. And most people don't want to just start giving away their assets or get rid of control over their assets if they don't have to, if they're not otherwise sick and they don't think they're going into a nursing home. But that is one thing that Medicaid will look at. They will look at everything that you've done over the last 5 years, okay? So what's going to count? One of the questions is what's going to count as a Medicaid asset? What's Medicaid going to look at when they're looking at assets? So let me start with what is not going to count, okay? So personal property is not going to count. Your household goods, your furnishings, your jewelry, your clothes, those are things Medicaid does not care about. They're not going to be looking into those things to see if you have them or not. Those are things you're going to be protected from keeping. Motor vehicle. You are permitted to have a motor vehicle as long as it is a motor vehicle that you are using for your own transportation. The applicant that's applying for a nursing home is using for their own transportation, or a family member is using on behalf of the applicant to get them around to doctor's appointments, to take them to the grocery store, take them to go get prescriptions, take them out to eat, take them for whatever use they're using it for the use of the applicant. That is also not going to be counted towards a Medicaid asset. Prepaid funeral, if you have a prepaid funeral, that's not going to count as an asset. A small amount of life insurance policies. If you have a term policy that has no insurance or no cash value at this point, that is going to be okay. If you have a insurance policy that does have a cash value, but the cash value does not exceed $1,500, also going to be okay. Medicaid's not going to look at that as well. You're permitted to have up to $2,000 in cash that Medicaid is going to say, okay, you can keep this $2,000. We're not gonna worry about that. Home. So the home has a little bit of a kind of twist to it, if you will, and I will discuss in a little while homes in more detail with a couple specific circumstances. But overall, for the not countable assets that we're discussing right at this section, home is going to be allowed to be valued up to $595,000, and as long as it doesn't exceed that, it's going to be a protected asset. Some states go up to $893,000. Again, that's going to be state specific. Some of these things are going to be state specific of different rules that the states can make as well. So it's going to be very important. That's why I said, depending upon what state you live in, to talk to an elder law attorney that specifically practices in that state and in that area and knows exactly what the rules are for that particular state. And when I say the value, look at the value for the equity, not just the value of the overall house. So if your house is valued at $800,000, but you have a mortgage that's got 400,000 on it, then of course the equity value is only 400,000, and that's what Medicaid is looking at, is the equity value. So you wouldn't exceed the value of the 595 if you have an $800,000 home with a $400,000 mortgage on it, because there's only $400,000 worth of value. Okay. So that's one thing to look at. They're also going to look at in states that where you have a spouse or another dependent, the equity value is completely irrelevant. If you have the spouse or the dependent, they don't care what the value of the house is, because the spouse or the dependent's living in there and the house is going to be protected. Also, some states have different definitions of keeping that house. So some states are going to look at if the person is intending to come back to the home. Is this going to be a temporary thing where the nursing home is not going to be forever and that person intends to come back to their home? That may be a requirement in order to keep the house. Some states use a likelihood test. Is there a likelihood of the person returning to the home? So again, it's going to be state specific in determining if those type of criteria are met, so that you can determine if the house is going to be protected or not. Okay, so those are things that are not going to count towards the Medicaid application process. So what kind of things are going to count? We're going to look at things like cash, bank accounts, vacation homes, so homes that are outside of your resident property that you're living in, mutual funds, stocks, CDs, 401ks and IRAs can be subject if nobody's taking any distributions from those at this point. Savings bonds, certificate of deposit, those types of things. Basically anything that can be liquidated cash value wise, Medicaid's going to want to know about those things. Okay. So now we know what counts and what doesn't count. So let's look at what can I do to get rid of some of this money? What's going to be a legitimate thing that Medicaid's going to say, okay, we understand you spent your money down, but we're okay with it because you spent it on something that's legitimate. So it's going to be important that as you're doing some of your planning and you're thinking about these things, that even if it's within the 5-year look back period, if you spent it on certain things, it's going to be okay. Medicaid's going to be okay with it. So what are some of those things going to be? Prepaid funeral. It's always going to be okay for you to prepay your funeral. If you haven't done that and you have some extra money sitting around, get to a funeral home, get to wherever you want to make your arrangements, your burial expenses, your funeral expenses, prepay for those things, get that taken care of. You can pay off your debts, and these are debts that are specific to you. I know a lot of people like to try and help their kids, help their family members. Oh, let me pay off your credit card for you. That's not going to be okay. These are debts that are specific to you. So these are things such as your mortgage, your credit card, medical bills, personal loans, those types of things. Any debt that you have, if you have that cash and you want to pay that off, you're welcome to do that. That's acceptable. Repairs and home maintenance. So anything that you want to do to repair your home. Hey, I need a roof. Hey, my air conditioning unit is bad. Hey, I've got holes in my carpet. Those are going to be acceptable. Improvements are not acceptable. You're not going to be able to build a extension on your home or the $50,000 pool and enclosure cage to add to your home. That's not going to be an acceptable expense. But if it is a repair or a maintenance that needs to get done, that will be an acceptable expense. Replacing an old vehicle. My vehicle is 15 years old. It's got 200,000 miles on it. I need a new one to be able to get myself around. Completely going to be acceptable. Go ahead and get that. Updating personal effects, household goods, clothing, furnishings, things like that that you need from your house. I'm living in a house that has a couch that's 12 years old and I can feel the springs through it. I need a new couch. I need a new recliner. I need a hospital bed to make it more comfortable for me to sleep. Those are all legitimate expenses. They're not going to give you a hard time with that. You can pay for medical needs, dental needs, vision needs, anything medical that's needed. You can go ahead and pay for that. You could buy a new home. If you don't have a home and you need a home, or you need a new home because your home's falling apart and you want to upgrade to a nicer home, you can do that. Just again, be cognizant of the equity values that they're going to look at, that 595 we just talked about, and make sure you're not buying anything excessive as it relates to that. You can pay for home care. Now this is a little interesting because Medicaid says, great, if you can stay out of a nursing home, every month you can stay out of a nursing home and less money that is out of our pocket and having to pay for you to be in a nursing home. So if you can move in with a family member, or a family member moves in with you, or a friend moves in with you, and you say, okay, look, I want to stay in my house, I'll pay you to take care of me. I will pay you X amount of dollars per month to be my caregiver, to run me around to doctor's appointments, to make my meals, to take me to the places that I need to go, the things that I need to take care of. Medicaid's okay with that. Now, what you want to make sure you do, though, is you want to make sure that you get a contract put into place. Again, go talk to an attorney. Get a home health care plan put into place in writing that clearly spells out what that caregiver's duties are, what your duties are for the person that's paying, how much is going to be paid every month, how that figure came about, because that way, if Medicaid looks back and says, okay, you paid somebody, $4,000 a month to take care of you, what did that person do for you? Where were you living with that person? Were they making your meals? Were they taking you places? Why were you paying? So you got to be careful with that, especially if it's a family member. Medicaid's not stupid, so they're going to look and go, okay, you moved in with your kids, moved in with your daughter. You paid her $10,000 a month to take care of you. What did she do for you for $10,000 a month? That's going to get a little crazy. So you're going to want to make sure that you speak with a professional who can tell you what's a reasonable number, what the expectations would be, what type of paper trail you should be keeping, so that you can make sure that that is well documented if that becomes an issue in the future. Okay. So those are some things that you can do in order to legitimately spend down some of the money. So another thing that people look at is, okay, how can I protect if I'm not spending down this money and I think I'm going to make it past my 5 years? What type of things can I do? What kind of vessels can I use to help avoid these costs? So the first thing you can look at is long-term care insurance. Now, long-term care insurance can be expensive, but I do have a lot of clients that do have long-term care insurance. They got it when they were younger. They got it into a good price point. Really hasn't increased too much over the years. They've had it for a lot of years. My advice to them is always, and they'll ask me, hey, should I keep it? My advice is always, hey, keep it, because you've already paid for it for a lot of years. It's a reasonable price. You can afford it. And that is usually a good policy because they will have the nursing home provisions in there, and they will pay for large chunk, if not all, of what your nursing home needs are or home health care needs are to cover that expense. If you are already a little older, 60, 70, 80 years old, not likely going to be a benefit for you because it's likely going to be extremely expensive to pay for that type of insurance. So that may not be the route you want to go. However, I would look into it based on your health, your age, a lot of different factors that may be able to assist you. So I would speak with somebody who handles long-term care insurance benefits and see if they can assist you. Transferring assets into somebody else's name. So a lot of times I'll have clients that come to me and they say, hey, I have this $100,000. I know I don't need it. What if I have to go into a nursing home? Can I just start gifting my money to my kids? I have 3 kids. I got Johnny, Jimmy, and Jenny, and I want to give them each money. How much can I give them every year that it's not going to be an issue? So you can do that. There's going to be rules on that, certain extents with that, but you can do that. But you want to be careful about those kinds of things. If you're truly gifting it to them because you just want them to have the money and you don't care what they do with them, as long as you get past that 5 years after you've gifted it, not going to be a problem. Medicaid's not really going to say anything about that because it's truly a gift. However, if the plan is, hey, I want to gift it and then I want my kids to hold it because I want to do it for Medicaid planning, got to be really careful with that for a few reasons. One, you don't want to run into any type of Medicaid fraud issues. Again, if it passed the 5 years, probably not going to be an issue. However, you also want to look at it from a practical standpoint of, okay, I'm giving this money to my kids for my kids to hold because I may need it later. Is the money going to be there when I need it? Now, us as parents, I have kids as well, we want to just say, oh, our kids tell us everything. We're in the loop. We know what's happening with our kids. They would never lie to us. Yeah, not so much the case. We tell our parents what we want them to know. We all know we do that. So that being the case, you may not be aware that your little Johnny has a bankruptcy pending or has divorce issues on the horizon with his or her spouse, or has creditor issues, lawsuit issues, has things that are happening that you may not be aware of that may affect your ability to get that money at some point in time because somebody else may take it. And so it might not be there. So that's not necessarily the best route to go in trying to get rid of money that you may want to have in the future, depending upon that. So you're going to want to take a look into that. The second issue with that is also if you gift that money over and they put it in an investment or there's something that they've put it back, anything that accumulates on that, gains, buy and sell that has made some kind of profit off of it, because it's in their name, they're now going to be subject to the tax on that. So that may involve kicking them into another tax bracket. If they have kids that are going to college soon and they're trying to get FAFSA program where they can qualify for grants or things like that, they now have to count that money as assets because it's in their name. So that may affect some type of funding availability for what they can do for their children for college, those types of things. So there's additional issues that can pop up by doing it that way. So it is an avenue you can use to transfer monies out of your name. And if it's something that you trust the person you're doing that with and you think you're going to get past the 5-year look back on that, maybe an avenue that you want to explore to get those assets out of your name. Third option is what's called an irrevocable trust. Now, there's a couple of things on irrevocable trust that you want to remember. The whole point with Medicaid is taking the money out of your name, transferring the money out of your name so that you have no control over that money. If Medicaid deems that you have any control over that money still, they're going to say, nope, that's not a transfer, that's a countable asset. We're going to use that in determining if you qualify for Medicaid or not. So some of the things to remember with an irrevocable trust, and again, behooves you to go to a lawyer that knows about irrevocable trust, knows how to prepare them, knows to make sure all of the proper provisions are in there so that it's going to qualify pursuant to what Medicaid's going to require. One of the things they're definitely going to be looking at is the creator of the trust, who's usually going to be the person thinking they're going into a nursing home at some point in time. They're usually going to be the ones creating the trust. Are they maintaining any clauses in that trust that allow them to continue to have any discretion over where their assets go? That they're the beneficiary, that they get to say where the assets go, that they have any control over that whatsoever. Because if they do, then that's not deemed a true irrevocable trust, and Medicaid's going to say, nope, transfer didn't take place. We're going to still continue to treat that as an asset for Medicaid planning, and you don't qualify. So it's very important to watch for that. There's a couple other things I'm not going to really go into great detail with, but one's called a pooled trust. That's basically where all of the money kind of goes into a pooled pot, as you would, the name suggests. The assets that you own and that you put into that pot are kept separate. However, the investments and the things like that that are taking place are all part of pooled together with other people that have trusts as well. Those have to be run by a nonprofit organization. Can't name your kid to be doing those types of things. Nonprofit runs it and they manage that. There's also a first party need trust. That's a trust designed for people that are under 65, say with disability issues or things like that, may want to put their money in there. It's used for their benefit for things that Medicaid or Social Security won't cover. Again, it's run by somebody else. That person has no control over it. Again, make sure you have somebody that knows what they're doing that takes care of that. Okay. So just a couple other basic issues. So what if the person is going into a nursing home and they have a spouse still, and the spouse is not going into the nursing home? So oftentimes you have situations where there's a husband and wife, they're both still alive, one needs to go into a nursing home, the other doesn't. So how is that going to be affected? Is Medicaid going to take every penny from both of them before one person can qualify for Medicaid? No, they're not that evil of a group. So they're not going to do that. So again, each state is different, but basically what you're looking at is there's going to be a cap for the most part of $128,000 that Medicaid is going to say, okay, we're going to let you keep that before we're going to start looking into spend down provisions. So I'm going to give an example because I always find that examples tend to be the best way to understand things. So we have husband and wife. They have a combined asset total of countable assets, so cash, bank accounts, things like that that Medicaid's looking at, that total $100,000. So Medicaid's going to say, okay, you have $100,000. Husband's going into a nursing home. Wife is not going into a nursing home. How much of this money are you going to have to spend down? So right off the bat, because it doesn't exceed the $128,000 that the person's entitled to keep, they're going to cut that in half. And they're going to say, okay, 50,000 belongs to the wife, 50,000 belongs to the husband. Husband's going into the nursing home, wife is not. So wife gets to keep her 50,000. So now we have 50,000 that husband's left with. Husband also gets his $2,000 cash allowance that I told you about earlier that doesn't count as a countable asset. So they're going to take that off the top too. So now we're left with 48,000 that has to be spent down of that 100,000 before Medicaid's going to qualify. So yes, you're going to lose out on monies, but you are going to be able to keep some of those monies so that not all of it gets spent down. Okay, so that's an example of how that works. Just some other common sense kind of just tips, if you will. If a person is going into a nursing home and the person is still competent and there's a house involved and there's a spouse, husband or wife situation still, it would be a good idea for whomever is going into the nursing home to go ahead and just sign their house interest over to whoever's not going into the nursing home, so that if anything arises with the house and that person then becomes incompetent, the surviving spouse can go ahead and take care of everything that needs to get done without having to worry about trying to get signatures from somebody who's no longer competent in a nursing home. So you can make that transfer and that's acceptable because that's not going to be taken. Also, if there's a spouse that's not going into a nursing home, again, same scenario, husband, wife, husband goes into the nursing home, wife is not going to the nursing home. A lot of times those couples already had their wills and whatnot done. The person not going into the nursing home should be considering redoing their will or their trust document to essentially leave husband out of it, because if wife passes away, and wife left everything to husband, then those remaining assets are going to go to the husband who's on Medicaid, and now he's not going to qualify for Medicaid. It's going to kick him out. There's going to be a spend down process. So you want to kind of end around the husband and do new estate planning to avoid that. Okay, and then the other situation is, what if a person is going into a nursing home and doesn't have a surviving spouse but does have a home? Are there any situations where they can transfer the home to anybody and still make sure that Medicaid doesn't get it? And the answer to that question is yes. There are certain circumstances where if you have any of these circumstances that take place and you want to transfer the house, you can. So those circumstances are to any child under 21. So if you have a child under 21, you can transfer it over. If you have a child who's disabled or blind, you can transfer over. If you have a sibling who has lived in the home for at least 1 year before the applicant goes into the nursing home, that can be transferred. And then if you have a caretaker child, and the caretaker child is defined as a child of an applicant who lived in the house for at least 2 years prior to the applicant going into the nursing home, and who during that time period of that 2 years or longer took care of the applicant to make sure that they didn't go into the nursing home. They basically took care of them so they didn't have to go into the nursing home sooner rather than later. So in those type of circumstances, those transfers can take place, and that's not going to be an issue. So basically that is what I have to offer for you today for some Medicaid planning tips. I'm planning on doing these videos hopefully over the next 2 to 3 weeks. I'm going to try and get out like one a day. Try to kind of keep them short and sweet and to the point. If you have other topics that you're thinking of, please feel free to give those topics to me, and I will see if I can get them in. I'll do some research on it, get some topics to you. I also have some friends that are different people within different industries, some other attorneys that do other areas of law, things like that, that I'm bringing on board to come join me for some of these videos to help give some information. So I'm calling this Hamy's Helpful Hints. I always like to come up with fun names for things like that. So hopefully it was helpful to you, and feel free to shoot me a message on Facebook if that's where you found me. You can feel free to send me an email. It's jenniferhamy@gmail.com. My name, no dots or anything, just jenniferhamy@gmail.com. I'll be happy to answer you, or shoot me a message letting me know what your topic of interest is, and I'll see if I can add that to the group. So I hope everything went well and that you got the information you needed, and I will hopefully talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.